The Legend of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Part 1, Chapter 15, Roof, written and performed by Joseph Chambers and based on the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic books created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. It was 8 p.m. and April was at the desk in her bedroom, attempting to focus on her homework. Her bedroom used to be bubblegum pink in colour. Her dad had chosen it, not considering her deep dislike for the colour and only its stereotypical association with her being a girl. But she had, by herself, and her parents had failed to realise after 2 years, repainted it dark blue with stars and planets in various sizes and bright colours. She had purple carpets and black skirting boards. Her bed was against one wall and her desk at a right angle to this. Next to her desk was a very full wardrobe. The opposite wall had a very well-stocked book/DVD/CD case, a poster of the Norse god Thor wielding Mjolnir. She was not religious, historically savvy, or into the comic book character, it just looked rather cool, and due to the starry background and lightning coming from his hammer, sort of went with the planets. And a door leading out of her bedroom into the rest of the apartment. The other wall was taken up by a television and a CD player on top of a chest of drawers, and a window looking down onto the streets below. Just as she was about to finish up and replace the sheet of fractions in her olive-coloured backpack, she heard a low humming emitting from her chest of drawers. April felt the panic of confusion being replaced by a wave of excitation. It must be that thing the turtles gave her. It had been a week since she had last seen Donatello, and she had started to think they had either forgotten her or were trying to avoid seeing her again. April scrambled over to her drawers and pulled the top one open, throwing socks everywhere to reveal her walkie-talkie device. The device was rectangular and green with a hexagonal turtle shell-like pattern on the back. Most of the front of the device was taken up by a screen, which glowed in her hand with an image of Donatello grinning beamed onto the screen overlaid with his name. April brought the device to her ear. The squeaky voice of Donatello emitted from the phone. "Good evening, April. Would you care to meet us on the roof?" "Roof? What on earth are you talking about?" Donatello, meanwhile, was hanging upside down by his toes outside her window from the rails of the fire escape whilst wrapping his hand on the window. April opened her curtains and had to clasp her hands over her mouth to stop herself screaming out of the shock of seeing the upside-down, smiling and waving figure. She hung up the device by tapping on the screen and then tried to open the window, as Donatello was talking non-stop into his device. She could not hear him, but he seemed not to notice and just continued nonetheless. Peculiar. It was locked. She never locked it. She ought to, but she never did. The key was usually in a pot under her bed. No. Why had the sound of glass smashing alerted her to Donatello breaking the window with his bow while still upside down. "My parents could hear you!" April fretted, climbing through the newly broken window to confront him properly. "Your dad departed for work a couple of minutes ago, and your mum is still out shopping. Besides, I asked you if I could break the window, and you failed to give an answer, so I presumed yes." "I hung up!" April yelled, exasperated. Donatello took the device away from the side of his head where his ears would be on a human boy and looked at the device. "So you have," he said, intrigued. April interjected. "Wait, how do you know what my parents were doing? Have you been spying on me?" "Is it important?" "Yes. Haven't you ever heard of a thing called privacy? And what about my window? I'll get my dad to sort it out." "But what, when, how?" She trailed off. Then she smiled. She didn't care what her parents would think. They probably wouldn't notice. April hurriedly climbed up the fire escape to the roof, rather eager to see what was occurring above her apartment. Donatello brought himself down from where he was hanging by his toes and followed shortly after her. The biting chill of the evening air was goosebumping her flesh, and she was unconsciously rubbing her palms on her upper arms. Her excitement made her forget a coat, and she was so anxious to see her friends again that she didn't really notice the cold. despite it being a February evening and her being outside in only her sweatpants, socks and a yellow t-shirt. She looked up at the clear sky and saw very few stars. It did annoy her at times that the light pollution of the city obscured her view of the rest of the universe. As she emerged onto the roof, she found herself suddenly yanked into a hug by something short and hard. "Yo, Dudette!" it beamed. "I'm Michelangelo!" He then let go and April nearly collapsed, having had the wind squeezed out of her against her will. It felt as if at least 3 of her ribs had been cracked on Michelangelo's hard plastron during the surprise hug. "Thanks for that," she coughed sarcastically. April noticed that he was carrying 2 nunchakus in his leather belt. He was also wearing at least 4 rubber bands on the end of each arm of varying colours for no obvious purpose. Much like his brothers, he wore aged brown wooden knee and elbow pads for protection. "You're luckier than you think. We've had his hugs our entire lives," Raphael said, coming out from behind a nearby fire exit. The roof was flat with 5 fire exits leading down the building, one leading down each of the 4 walls and one in the centre for the top of the internal staircase. Right next to this was a water tower. However, she never expected there to be thickly laid out sand on the ground. She also noticed Master Splinter sweeping the sand with a rake. "Sand? Are you going to be doing sparring?" April asked. "Yes, we are," came Leonardo's powerful voice in her ear, having jumped out from behind a water tower. "Please stop doing the whole I am a ninja and must prove it thing at every possible moment," April screamed. "You are going to give me cardiovascular problems at this rate." "Give you a what?" Mikey said as he scratched the top of his head like a bamboozled ape. "My mom is a surgeon and she's worn off on me with all of her medical speech," April answered. "Great, now we got 2 weirdos who use long words," Raph sulked, pointing at Donatello. "And proud!" Donatello yelled back with a beam. April grinned at the madness the world had dealt her.